Hello, Global Theater. My name is Jerry Fielka. Today is June 19, 2024, Juneteenth. Want to thank Rob Grant and this amazing podcast. I'm probably wrong about everything. Want to thank today's guest, William Farley. Thank you so much, William. And where in the heck you calling in from?
I'm in San Francisco.
First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The the best thing, well, from my experience, I think it is um, following your instinct and surrendering to your creativity.
Yeah, it's really good. What's your favorite form of information, how it comes into you?
Well, the one that's the most mysterious is audio. I I get a lot of information serendipitously through overhearing things, or random piece of information comes in through radio or even streaming. But I think that the my alertness for the ahas is very much associated with my ability to my hearing, and um, so that's I've been thinking about that. But that's an area where I'm really grateful for how I receive information in that realm.
I'm totally with you. I'm a huge radio person and I love just hearing people talk on the street and just random sounds and specifically curated sounds. So why do you think humans collect or gather information?
Um, Self-preservation,
Yeah.
and once you get beyond that, probably entertainment. We love a good story.
Yes. And do you think this need or want to collect information is more innate or more invented?
Well, it's one of our senses, so I think depending on your temperament and your personality, it's a tool to survive, and
Yeah.
then once we get past that dimension, we have the ability to be entertained by sound.
Yeah.
Um,
Do thoughts create emotions?
Definitely. Even, even though our thoughts are not very reliable, in that we can be triggered by the most ridiculous things, and the triggers seem to land on how we feel. And I think there's nothing arbitrary about how we feel. It's a reaction, and where I'm a very reactionary person, so I become sensitive to that.
Wow, I'm glad you laughed too, William, because that's what this series is all about is having fun. And it's funny because there's a bumper sticker on my street on a car and it says, "Don't believe everything you think." And I say, well, you could say, "Don't believe everything you feel."
You remember that bumper sticker, question authority?
Yeah.
It's another one, just giving you permission uh, to enjoy the ride, to be open to what's presented to you, and to see where it brings you. Uh,
Yeah.
my joke is that when I think about my assumptions, I would think that about 99% of them are always wrong. My
Yeah.
assumptions. Um, the usually you don't get enough of the picture to have an informed point of view, but there are disciplines. They have the privilege of growing old. There are disciplines you take on that help to enhance your ability to discern.
Yeah, I love that. One of my heroes, dear friend Phil Chamberlain, he would say, "Question authority," and he go, "Says who?"
That's good, very
And
good.
then my other favorite bumper sticker is, um, "Question authority, but not your mother."
I just thought of another bumper sticker that I like, and it's like baby on board. But they don't. You have to remember that that may be the driver.
Yeah. Right. Fill in the blank, William. I don't know what I think until I
um, until I check and see if I'm hungry.
Oh my God. Now that's the great verb there though is see, check. Well, check is the verb and then see if I'm hungry. Because McLuhan says, I don't know what I think until I say it. Joan Didion says, I don't know what I think until I write it.
Nice.
So that these are really good. Can humans think without language?
Um, I think sometimes um, the synapses fire by stimulus that doesn't have anything to do with your thinking. It's rather a receiving of something that's larger than your imagination or how you see yourself at the moment. I've had this happen to me many times, and I work at it. Happen when I volunteer that condition to appear as much as it wants in my life.
Yeah. Well, Chomsky says the language is not just words, it's a culture, a tradition, a unification of community, a whole history that creates what a community is. What do you do when language doesn't work? When language breaks down, what do you do?
Well, I mean, the most which comes to mind immediately is usually it's in an emotional situation, and when I fail to understand what's going on and I'm not able to communicate it, I'm learning to just be quiet.
Yeah.
Because the generally you're when you're grappling to communicate, you're already caught in a place that's not very productive. And so if you have enough discipline to let whatever's going down unfold, you might get a better glimpse of what's going on. It seems to me a lot of times things are much more impersonal than you think. We tend to take everything personally.
Yeah.
That's an illusion.
It's an illusion, definitely. Thelonious Monk said the loudest sound in the universe is silence.
Yes, that's beautiful.
And then I saw this ad and I never could find again for American Zen. And it said the three things are don't believe anything, um, and keep an open mind and take nothing personal. Like, good luck. How can you not take things personal? But what you just said is sort of evoking that.
Well, one of the ways I try to integrate that idea is when I see someone driving too fast and I'm on the road with them and they're starting to make me nervous, and yet it's not a damn thing I can do about it. One of the things I imagine is, well, maybe they have a sick child in the back seat and they're rushing to the hospital. I might as well have a story to go with it that doesn't bring up my personal feeling of vulnerability, and because my anger is not going to help.
That's so smart. I know what you're saying. Well, your observations of humans in general, are we more thinking beings or more feeling beings?
It's the chicken and the egg, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I think we have the illusion that we're thinking, but I think we're feeling. I think we're. I mean, I'm a reactive person, and this is not something I'm proud of. It just happens to be my disposition, and I think it's not uncommon for people to navigate their lives by reacting to the stimulus around them, and that's what I'm talking about. Trying to be a little bit more impersonal. The other part about it I find is quite surprising is at my age, I don't think, I mean, I don't need to have an opinion about everything. It's okay not to have an opinion. And yet a lot of people feel obligated that they have to have an opinion. Well, I think that's a choice rather than an obligation.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very good point. And Bridget Bardot says, when I make love, I don't think. And I'm like, good luck. How do you turn your brain off from thinking? But chicken and egg is a great observation too, because we can't separate feeling from thinking, but we think we can because we invented the two words.
Yeah, the other part about it that seems to come to mind is we're habitual. So we're very fond of our habits, even the bad ones,
Yeah.
because at a certain point in our life they worked. They created comfort, some kind of safety. But if you have the privilege of age, you realize that that most of your habits are not worthy of repeating. And actually, you do have a choice in the matter, but it takes a lot of consideration before you notice the habitual reaction you're getting to whatever the hell's in front of you.
Very wise. These are two questions from Alan Turing in the 50s. One, is thinking a function of the soul?
Um, I mean, my definition, layperson's definition of the soul is the dimension of you that is universal. So, what's going on with the soul is an alignment. I mean, I think the easiest way, and I think of soul, is I don't know about you, but when I see a baby, I involuntarily smile. I just
Yeah.
is something. I know it's the innocence, but it's also they are so present, uh,
Yeah.
absolutely present. That for me, I find it astonishing because I have to work at being present. It's not there all the time. Uh, I'm in different parts of my imagination and my past and my future with more regularity than I care to admit.
Yeah. Amazing. We're going to get into what you just brought up deeply. That is so well put. Thanks for being articulate and concise, William. So the second Turing question is, can machines think?
Well, I guess we're on the verge of that with the artificial intelligence, but can they think? Uh, they can process, but
Yeah.
whether they can think or not is is quite up for grabs.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, they can process, and
Yeah.
so on a mathematical level, they can certainly deliver. But choices has another level of understanding that man-made intelligence hasn't been able to quite get a handle on.
Do you more pursue happiness or more pursue meaning?
Well, I often think if we were truly deeply religious people, we would live a life of joy. That would be we would be obligated that would that's our requirement of the privilege of being in this time space reality uh, uh, called life. And I don't know you, I don't get to joy that often, but um, it's a state that I enjoy being in, every pun intended, but it's elusive.
Well, wow, you really touched on what my follow-up comment always is I got the question from Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, and he says, happiness doesn't tend to last, and meaning tends to last. And often people they shift the word, which I'm totally open to. It's like me and you versus the wording on these questions to joy instead of happiness. That joy is like, I want to say, a better state than happiness.
Well, it's funny. It seems to me that more in some subconscious way, human beings are very afraid of joy because joy implies out of control.
Right.
Whereas when you talk about fear, somehow in your imagination you can kind of build limits to fear. But with joy, no, joy is not easily subscribed to having parameters. So it is really a free state.
Wow. So you touched on this. Does the brain more detect consciousness or create it? Like, is consciousness there bubbling away and we're more so detecting it or more so creating it?
Well, you're referencing consciousness, and it seems to me that consciousness is a thing that it's a state, and when we enter it, we are more in touch with whatever's going on directly in front of us, and less preoccupied with the future and the past.
Yeah. What's faster, speed of light or speed of thought?
I guess if you have enlightened thoughts, that would solve that puzzle. But these are mysteries that are not easily decodable.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because I don't know if you've noticed that in the newspapers recently, or wherever the hell you get your information, that they've taken 1 second off the world clock, and uh, I don't know about you, but I know that things are speeding up, but I'm not sensitive enough to notice a second
Yeah.
needing to be dropped from the equation. Uh, um, so the idea of, I mean, Einstein's theory of relativity is a theory. It also fascinates me that to this day we still don't know what the hell gravity is.
Right. Well, Audre Lorde, the poet, said you can't dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. Yvonne Rainer responded and said, you can if you expose the tools. What new tool do you suggest?
uh, I think that deciding to be preoccupied with the present moment is the more useful application of your attention.
Yeah. You mean like be here now, Ram Dass?
Yes, I do. Um, yeah, quite an interesting man.
But it's just like what you said earlier. You nailed it. You said when you look at a baby, they look like they're happy because they're living in the moment. They're
Precisely.
not worrying about some stupid thing in the future or the past. They're like, hey, here I am right now. Let's smile and amazing. That is a great tool to be here now, to live in the present. So what new toy do you suggest?
New toy. Um, well, one of the things that I do, toy is maybe not the right word, but it toys with my reality, is that
Yeah.
I find places in the city that I haven't been before, mostly wild places. There's an enormous amount. San Francisco, the Bay Area is this extraordinary gift of nature. And I go to places I haven't been before and I just walk around. And sometimes I'm just overwhelmed at how beautiful and wild they are.
Yeah.
Even though I don't go in with expectations. I go in to be in a place that I'm not, have not been in. I mean, really a place that I haven't ventured to before. And it's always a delight, and it always has obviously different. I have a different response to it because as I enter, I'm coming from whatever my day was like and my preoccupations. But generally, it's larger than and then what I'm when I'm thinking about after I park the car.
That's beautiful, man. You're my hero. That's what I wanna do, is just wander wander about and find new places instead of routine. Because like, I ride my bike every morning, and each day I have a different route, and I like that. I feel secure and happy, but I sort of like it when all of a sudden I'm off on a different route, and I'll like, "Wow, that's a good move.
The,
Take a different alley." Yeah.
the other part about this is that I also I have a purpose. I have an excuse, and it's a thin excuse, but it's an excuse. I walk around and I take pictures with my phone, and what I don't have to have an agenda because it's all about just um, uh, composing. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about the f-stop. I don't have to worry about the focus. So it's my way of gathering, even though
Yeah.
I really have a purpose to sell any photographs that I might capture or might reveal themselves to me. But once again, I'm a working class person, so having having an excuse that I might discover something that will give me pleasure is part that goes along with my adventures in environments that I haven't been before.
Yeah. What do you worry about when you go to bed at night?
My joke is, did I turn the gas off? But
That is a good that's not a joke, we're obsessed with that. Did I
well,
pull the cord on the iron? Yeah, but did I turn the Go ahead, sorry.
I mean, the point is, I really um, when I go to bed at night, I'm preoccupied with resting, with renewing myself,
Yeah,
and for the most time, that's enough to fill my imagination. I also do. I have a variety of meditations I may do before I close my eyes, and all of which are to let me move into the next area
yeah,
of my mind being quiet. It's not always works that way, but it does enough that I continue with this. I would call it a discipline, I guess.
yeah. McLuhan learned from Ezra Pound the poet that artists are the antenna of the race. They're broadcasting and detecting the hidden psychic effects of our inventions. So we might learn how to cope with what we don't like about our inventions. So, William, I asked you the question Marshall probed his whole career. Why do we ignore the hidden psychic effects of our inventions, even though the artists are broadcasting them to us?
I think my own experience is we have we have a tendency to preoccupied with what we don't have,
Yeah,
and it may have started on some primal level with food, and then other means of feeling safe. But the truth is, in most of the time, we have everything we need.
yes.
I mean, not that our imaginations don't deliver. It's just once again, it's the habitual part of ourselves. Um, I, I've noticed that the my mind has been playing this radio show called Farley for my entire life, and you know what? I'm really bored with that show. I really am tired of it. It's been useful at times, but it's preoccupied with my survival,
Yeah,
and it's involuntary. So, and I don't think it helps. I don't think it helps. I think it's a distraction, and
yeah,
I think it keeps us away from the incredible unfolding of miraculous things that continue to happen. I've been very fortunate. I've had an enormous amount of grace in my life,
yeah.
enormous, and I'm I'm really uh, feel privileged, and I encourage it. I encourage this interaction with phenomena.
Do artists have moral obligation?
Towards what?
Yeah, see, you win, William, because this series is about asking new questions. So you answered a question with a question. Brilliant. Is most people go, well, everybody has a moral obligation, and then they go, well, they have an obligation to themselves. But it's like there's two words there, moral and obligation that we're dealing with. So yeah, to what? Exactly. I agree.
I mean, I think we all, in our better selves, um, seem to want to apply that we can express the better version of ourselves. The
Yeah.
version that's not as good is always handy if you need it, but it doesn't give the satisfaction of feeling good and feeling generous towards other people. I know some very famous um, mystic said that our skin doesn't keep us apart from each other; it connects us with each other. And I think that has a great deal of truth to it. This thing is
Yeah.
we're in an enormous collaboration.
Yeah.
We haven't recognized it, but it makes me laugh when I think that we go to a restaurant anywhere in the world, and we sit down and we procure a meal, and we trust that the cook is not going to poison us, that
Yeah.
that it's all going to work out well, and we kind of just take it for granted. And yet, if you just think about that, what the assumption is behind that,
Yeah.
the assumption is a sense of well-being,
Yeah.
and yet this is culturally, I don't think any of us have been in very few situations where we're afraid we're going to be poisoned uh, uh, for trusting some stranger in some foreign place with
Yeah.
providing for us.
So well put, William. Are you more afraid of new ideas or more afraid of old ideas?
I'm more afraid of old habits.
Yeah.
In that whole habits are interesting things. They work for us, but they basically are always associated with the time. So they may have gotten us through a troubled spot, a difficult period, but generally we outgrow that way to feel better. I
Yeah.
find that I still have a very active um, pull towards the sweet, and so I have to monitor it because it's good once in a while, but it doesn't have much of a payoff. It's not a good thing for my body, and it's not enough of a ride for what it takes out of you.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever or one of them?
well, all the ones that I think about, I've been writing down stories about my life because I've had such um, a surprising experience, and I seem to be able to. I hold most of them are about trauma, and those seems to be um, ones that come up faster than just pure pleasure. Pleasure seems to evaporate pretty quickly, but the stories of trauma, even though some of the stories are very funny, um, seem to hold. I mean, so I could, if you would like one in that category of kind of outrageous, but informative, um, I can go there for one or one of several. What would you like?
Oh, just one that's one memory that you can recall is fine. Yeah. Whatever you want.
Um, well, the one that comes to mind is I was 5 years old, and every Friday we would go to the market, and my father and mother both worked, and they got paid on Friday, and so they do their shopping. And after they did their shopping, we'd go to a bar at Weymouth Landing at the South Shore of Boston, and go there to my father to have a beer. My mother might have a highball, and wait for a taxi to bring us home with the groceries. So this is around Christmas time, and their arms are filled with bags of groceries, and I'm kind of leading the pack, but no one's got my hand. They're just kind of following. And the swinging doors at Helen's open up, and and I go in first. And at the end of the bar is sitting Santa Claus, on a stool. And
Yeah.
the moment the door opens and I see him in front of me, I'm 5 years old. I see him in front of me. He pulls down his beard and takes a shot of whiskey. And to this, I remember the shot glass hitting the bar, and he let go of his beard, and the elastic bands put it up over his face again. And I was shocked because I thought Santa Claus was a real person. And so, we make our way to the bar, and everybody's trying to. My eyes must have been the size of saucers. I mean, I had just seen something that I should not have seen in relationship to the myth of Santa. And I remember that the bartender gave me a Shirley Temple, and he put extra fruit on the drink, and giving me all the little stirs. And one of them had a seal on it from a certain whiskey. I can't remember. Calvera, I think it was called. But everybody's trying to convince me that wasn't Santa Claus. That was one of his helpers.
What a great story. You are so articulate and colorful. Is memory more a curse or more a blessing?
Well, I think it's originally a guide to re-navigate the present moment. Yeah. But I think I think it's more valuable when it reminds me of how much larger you are than you imagine. And that happens with your interaction with other people. I remember in art school in Boston, first, like in high school, I was a shop student. I was being bred to be able to work in a factory, which I did for a while. But I remember one of my teachers, Mr. Kane, taught math. And on all of the holidays, Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, whatever, he would have me do a color chalk mural on the blackboard. Now, I never took an art class, and to this day, I don't know how the hell he knew I could draw. But in a way, nothing was mentioned. He said, Farley, you go up to the board and do an Easter drawing, and we're going to do this test. I was always pretty good in math. But anyway, I just did it. I didn't know what I was doing, but I took all the colored chalks, and I would draw something and paint it in. And in a way, that I've had that kind of unsuspecting and unknown encouragement my entire life. It's all people. I've been very, very fortunate that I've met people who saw more in me than I was able to see in myself. So, that's a great gift that you have people that are out there that I encounter that kind of show me in not overt ways, but in very subtle ways that you're larger than what you imagine.
Yeah.
And this is everybody, by the way, and everybody has the interaction. Yeah. It's like how often is how it becomes part of your memory, how often it happens to you. But everybody has it. Everybody has it.
Yep. And it's perfect because you must have ESP because it's flow right into the next question. Tell me someone within your immediate family, then outside your immediate family, just briefly, who had an impact on you, kind of like a role model. And what specifically was that impact?
So inside my family, my uncle Tom Farley, I just love this man, and I remember he got me he worked in a factory. He got me a job. First, one of the things he did was he worked at this place called East Braintree Finishing, which did with cloth and other things. They also made tracing cloth. I remember when I was a kid, I was maybe 8, 9 years old. He brought me a roll of tracing cloth. Now, even in those days, this cloth is very expensive, and a big roll. It must have weighed 40 pounds. And so I started tracing everything in the house, including the images on the TV. And once again, this is all an expression of my curiosity. I've had amazing curiosity. So that was one of the things he did. The other he did was he got in the summertime. He was a gardener in this big estate, and I was hired to cut the lawn. Every Saturday or every other Saturday. It took all day. It took 8 hours. And at the end of the day, so I'd go. He said, "Now the most important thing for you to do before you go home at the end of the day is to trim the walkway to the front door, trim the edges of all the ground shrubbery, and make sure you sweep everything up." He said, because he said, "You got to remember," he said, "you're in show business, because when they come home, they won't go out to the big property, all the lawn cut. They won't even notice it, but they'll notice what's right in front of them when they walk in the front door."
Yeah.
And I love the idea that he said I was in show business, that I had to show them that I was there. And in a way, I guess I've been part of show business ever since, in a very overt way. But I thought, I remember that, and he was just a dear man, and wonderful guy.
That's really good, William, because you can tell how it was laying a basis for you to become conceptual artists, political activists, documentary filmmakers so much, but it was practical and down to earth. It wasn't like high fluent. So now the same, really good on Uncle Tom. Now, outside your immediate family, same question.
So many. I come to mind now that we're kind of reflective of my childhood. I was working in a factory in Quincy, and it was a grueling job. The money was pretty good, and my mother showed my drawings. I used to draw. We'd be on a Sunday night. My father, my mother, my grandmother, who's my mother's mother, and myself would be listening to the radio, and Jack Benny. And anyway, I'd be laying on the floor drawing, and drawing was something I did to kind of create a space in a very small house. And somehow I was in this factory, and she found an artist. She said, "Oh, I showed your drawings to an artist." I don't know where the hell she found an artist. And she said, "Oh, you're very talented." So she said, "Maybe you should go to art school." So that was a stranger that said I should go to art school. And, I never thought of the idea. I never took an art class in all of my schooling. And I ended up going to art school in Boston to learn how to be a commercial artist, how to be an illustrator. And this parallels two things. I had one teacher, a painter, a wonderful painter named Bill Georginas, who befriended me. And he never, ever said that I had the potential to be an artist, an independent artist outside of doing commercial work. But we'd go out to Greek food or even to, okay, he'd bring me on occasion, I'd go to things with him. But he never said that you should consider going to the fine arts. He never said that. But his kind of belief in me brought me to explore more areas of the art world than just the commercial end.
Yeah.
Never told me I could be a fine artist. Never, not once. Had
Wow.
no impact on me directly, but indirectly, he was extremely empowering to me.
Great word. Did your parents raise you a particular religion?
My father was a Catholic. My mother was a Protestant. My mother was a Methodist. She never went to church one day in her life. And the Methodist sect of Protestantism is against alcohol. And she married an Irish Catholic. And part of his religious calling was drinking beer. Ale, actually. He drank ale. And so I was brought up a Catholic, and my mother, when they made me go. My mother, my grandmother, who was also Protestant, never went to church, um, made me go to Sunday school after Mass every Sunday. So I was brought up a Catholic.
Do you pray?
Um, I speak with my concept of the higher versions of myself and the higher versions with everything else. It certainly could be called prayer and meditation, and I call it a conversation with my higher intelligence, with my higher being. So yeah, sure.
If God exists, William, what would you like God to say to you after you die?
Well, I prefer hearing God while I'm alive, actually.
Very good. No one's flipped that question to that. I think you already told me it's when that little baby smiled at you, that was God saying hello.
You don't have to say much more than that. It's really
Do
true.
do evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I think hurt perpetuates hurt, and it's a state of being unawake. So you can call it whatever you want. It certainly is just disturbance to the psyche of almost anyone who encounters it. To frame it as evil is just a convenience. We're just talking about unconscious behavior. We're quite capable of it, and um, it's part of the human condition.
Yeah. Well, the hidden question really is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And I'll set it up. Alan Watts says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the samurai and the mob, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. So it's a lot of thoughts. Basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you respond to Alan Watts? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
Well, I mean, I heard Alan Watts on the radio every Sunday for many, many years until he died, every Sunday. And a lot of it was over my head, but the spirit of what he was talking about, I could take in. I think that, in relationship to there is purposes to be afraid. It's called self-preservation, and I have had two enemies. One thing, I run like hell away from people I think are my enemy. I run away. I have, but I think that I have a story that kind of sums this up. I used to work on cargo ships in the Merchant Marines. I had license to work on ships, and on a ship, you're with a bunch of strangers in a very very small environment. And I remember one day I was on the 8 to 12 shift, which is not the best shift because you don't get as much overtime. But I went in the morning. I was going to get to the galley to get my breakfast, and there were some guys sitting there. Mostly the guys were in the engine room, and I was in the deck department. And these rooms, these different job you have, kind of keeps you away from each other unless there's parts of the day you're on the same shift and you might end up with other people. But these guys said to me, I walked in. He said, this guy says to me, "Oh yeah, the electrician's been saying some pretty bad things about you." And I said, I can't be offended by someone I don't respect. And it just put it away. That is to say, I don't know where that insight came to but that was like manna from heaven. Because when you're on a ship, I noticed the first time I shipped out, when you're on the um, aft of the ship, at time in the back, watching, just getting some air, watching the screw turn up the water. It's just a place out of the wind. People spent about 10 or 12 feet from each other, distance. And I thought that's kind of odd. People aren't so being very close. Well, it turns out, I think, that it's a survival technique, because if you don't know who the other crew members are, you're not so sure that you want to be in a position that if somebody really didn't like you, they might be inclined to do you harm, like throw you off the ship. And I say that because the only felony that was not accepted, you could not be in the Merchant Marines. The only felony that you could not have committed was involved in drugs. Because you're in and out of all these ports, you have access to illegal substances. And so other than that, you could be a bank robber, you could be a rapist, you could be whatever the hell, a burglar, but it would have not had any impact from keeping you to get Merchant Marine papers. So you didn't know who the hell you were with. And so my job really on those ships was not to make any enemies. I've had this happen several times. I worked in a mafia bar. I've worked several. And the one time I got a guy walking, I had spent the summer at Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture. I'd gotten a grant. And I came back to Boston. I was looking for some work. And I walked by this club, which I will not name. And the guy at the door was a guy I went to high school with, Joe Hart. I said, "Hey, Joe, what are you doing?" He said, I'm the bouncer. And anyway, he said, "They're looking for a bartender." I said, "Really? Well, I'm a bartender." So I went in and I got the job. And this next night I worked, I asked the other bartender, there was two of us. I said, who am I replacing? What happened to the guy I'm replacing? And he said, with two brothers on this place. And he said, Joe saw the bartender flirting with his girlfriend, and he reached over and broke his jaw. And so I realized that I had to be very, very neutral. I didn't want to offend anybody, because
Right.
I was actually in a very dangerous situation. I've worked in many of these clubs, but my point is that the enemy is only the enemy if you activate their opinion of you.
Yeah.
So once again, it's a subjective call, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, William, I'm glad you realize this. I'm open for anecdotes, stories, and tangents. That was really a great story. And it reminded me of Sam Goldwyn's great quote: "As for the critics, don't even ignore them."
That's good. That's really good.
This is Nassim Taleb. Games were created to give non-heroes the illusion of winning. In real life, you don't know who really wins or loses, but you can tell who a hero is. And then someone said, villains don't think they're bad. They want control. Heroes want freedom. And Gregory Bateson, the anthropologist, says, if the criminal gets caught, does he go, whoa, my criminal skills weren't up to snuff that day? Or does he say, oh, I did something morally and socially wrong? So again, it's a lot of prompts. You can go wherever you want, but the basic question is, does punishment work?
Well, it certainly creates a forced reflection.
Yeah.
Who knows what percentage of people are able to take advantage of it, but it's once again, it seems to me, a desperate act. It's funny because I've read a definition of the rebel. I always saw myself as kind of a rebel, but there's another definition of the rebel, which I like, and I like it because it challenges the assumptions I was carrying. And the remark is that a rebel is a person who can't own their own power. So they find other ways to assert themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, there's something about identity too there. They can't own their own power.
Precisely.
Yeah, that's heavy. It reminds me of Krishnamurti and McLuhan both said that violence is the human search for identity. And it's sort of like, that's what maybe the rebel is doing. They're trying to figure out who they are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I never, well, back to my Uncle Tom, my father's brother, younger brother. He was a prize fighter for a while. And then he went this is probably in the 30s. He hitchhiked to New Hampshire with a buddy of his to see a heavyweight fight. Gene Tierney was a heavyweight. And he sat close enough. He said, after that fight, I realized I was not a fighter. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do what Gene Tierney could do. And but he taught me how to box. And when I learned how to box, I remember waiting for the school bus. A kid I grew up with was kind of always confrontational. And so I used my boxing skills with an open hand because I didn't really want to hurt him. I actually liked him, and he liked me, but he was also confrontational. And just what I had learned from my Uncle Tom, I kind of, without hurting him, boxed his ears off. But I never, I didn't like fighting.
Yeah.
I found no satisfaction in doing it. And the last fight I had was when I was in the Army. And actually, it was quite a conundrum. I was working at a place called Nate and Leon's at the Pimlico racetrack, and as a waiter. And they had a new hostess. And she, I don't know how I was only working a few nights a week because I was in the Army. But she wanted to go out on a date. So, and then the bartender told me, that's my girlfriend. And so I didn't know that. And so he wanted to fight. So it was not much I could do about it. But the funny part about it is he was a bartender. If I won the fight, I wouldn't get any drinks when I ordered them for the customers. And if I lost, I was going to get hurt. So that little fight we had was I basically held him and clutched him. He never hurt me. He finally got exhausted. And I said, I apologize. I would not have gone out with her if I knew that she was your girlfriend. But I haven't had a physical fight for a long time.
That's good. It reminds me of the old joke. Is this a private fight or can anyone join in?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I just wrote an essay called Can Art Stop War? And that's the big issue is most people think we're hardwired to fighting. And, if we go back to the matristic societies and maybe we're not hardwired to fight, and that military is not the only way to resolve conflict. There is other ways to resolve conflict,
Well, since the atomic bomb was created, I think we have basically outdated violence as a means to resolve anything, because we've gotten to the point where we can take out the whole planet.
Yeah.
And it makes us all live in a really unsettling world.
Yeah.
Use these primitive means to navigate our differences.
Yeah. Well, it's really partnership, but in regards to what you just said, I love Frank Zappa's line. He said, we'll never have another atomic bomb because too much real estate's involved. So James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin. Volta Cinema, and he basically checked out. This is 100 years ago. He says, so why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said that sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we have to recreate things in order to get them? Why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Well, I think we're preoccupied with the scenario that we're living, and and um, and it seems to not encourage being present in the moment. It more is inclined to feed your want. I want this. I want that. I want this. I want that. Regrettably, the wants don't seem to have much of a payoff. So and so. But they're hard to challenge. They're hard to you have to have time to realize the disappointment in getting everything you want, and still be have the great emptiness that that is not a profound state of being, but rather a hunger. And so it's a part of ourselves is unfulfilled. But I just like I say, it's the man, can you imagine now that the virtual world is taking over from the created world of media, the virtual world, and so the idea that I'm having this funny fatigue about the times we're living in right now because I have I have a habit of enjoying going to brick and mortar places to shop. I'm not doing a lot of shopping, but for everything. And the idea that the brick and mortar buildings that house places to buy things is evaporating because of the virtual world. Everything online is available online, and I like the interaction of going to the bakery, the interaction of going to the guy who repairs your shoes, all of the things that you take for granted that are enriching your life and allow you to have a greater appreciation. You know, one of the things I grew up with in this small factory town outside of Boston was that whatever someone did for a living, if they did it with some pride, they had the respect of their fellow citizens.
Yeah.
And I may be being a romantic about this, but I feel the deprivation of the isolation of us not having this involuntary interaction with other people to go into our business. I mean, I go to the main post office. I have a post office box, and I always say hello to all of the clerks, and they all know me. They give me a wave. It's just to acknowledge that I appreciate what they're doing, and that I wish them well. And I don't think we want to be deprived of that. We must encourage ourselves to create situations that allow that interaction.
That's what life's all about. William, that's why I love Venice, California, man. I ride my bike down the boardwalk and I encounter all kinds of people and we sit and talk and you never know who you're going to run into. And I go to the library every day and, it's an amazing thing to encounter other people. Brick and mortar, that's really well put what you just said. And I hope that it'll never go away. And I was curious if you would just sort of, you have a great website and your bio is really articulate and it lays this all out. So I was just wondering if you could tell us more specifically, where's your tipping point to become a filmmaker? Like you told us a lot about your going into the art, drawing as a kid and being various jobs in the army and all your articulate, concise storytelling in your background. But where was that where you go, oh, I can be a filmmaker. I'm going to pursue this.
If I'm trying to frame my process, it seems like most of us, most of the ahas in my life, the reveals seem to come to me in manners that I did not expect. I'm in graduate school in California, and I'm a sculptor, and so moving from being a commercial artist illustrator, I was in the army for 2 years, army illustrator, which meant really doing charts. There's very, very little artistic endeavor. But I learned very quickly how to take advantage of everything that the military provided. And one of them was that I could take classes associated with my MOS, my job in the army. So I went to a local art school and took night classes. And I thought, well, maybe I'm going to take a class in sculpture. So I started making sculptures just because I had never done it before. The army was paying for it. And I got out of duty a little bit for it. And then when I got out of the army, I decided to go to this school, Maryland Institute College of Art, and study sculpture. So I went back I was a sophomore when they took me. I had already done 3 years of art school, but so I went back, and then I got a BFA in Bachelor of Fine Arts as a sculptor. And I got accepted in graduate school in California, at California College of Arts and Crafts, now called California College of Art. And one of the electives I took, I was still making sculpture, but my work was getting more and more conceptual. It was more and more about ideas than objects. And I had an elective, and I took a film history class. It was a terrific class, the history of cinema. And at the end of the class, the professor said, you can either write a paper about the films I showed, or you can make a film. So I was very cavalier. I didn't know a damn thing about making a film. Well, I said, what the hell? And I made this short film called Making Out with my dear friend, Willie Walker. And it was a short film about necking. And every time the boy made a move, a pinball machine came on and gave him a score. And I showed at the Monterey Film Festival, about 600 people there. And when I went, and they were all laughing, and I was hooked. I was totally seduced by the experience of having people laugh at what I thought was funny. And by the time I got out of graduate school, I had more credits in film than I did sculpture. So I was off and running just because of one innocent school project that happened to be successful. And I couldn't turn back. I mean, I really enjoyed making things, objects, but I saw films as movies as objects, and I have one more kind of frame on this that only comes in as a hindsight. But at a certain point, I recognized that making films was not so different from the ancient times when people would sit around a fire and tell stories. And this had gone on for a millennium. And it was sharing and storytelling. And I realized the only thing that I was doing different was that my movies were now moving from the circle and the fire to the horizontal. That I saw. I actually had a more epiphany of this. I saw that movies were in the sky, that the stories became movies that were on the sky. And so I also felt I was part of a tradition that I felt very comfortable with and that I had profited by my entire life. I've known great storytellers, and they have really shaped my life.
Really beautiful, William. It reminds me of 2001, the monolith is that horizontal. And guess what? That's the same ratio as the cell phone now. We're carrying around monoliths in our pocket. But that was really beautiful how you said that, because we're going to go deep into that now. And in fact, it was Kubrick who said, no, a screenwriting teacher told me great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick says the opposite. Great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process making a film?
Being a filmmaker was my excuse to tell stories that captured my imagination. So I was never connected to any particular genre. I was connected to what inspired me.
Yeah.
And what inspired me was what would grab onto me, like grab me, and wouldn't let go of me. And I honored that. And the first film I made out of graduate school, I was on a cargo ship, and I have to set this up a little bit. I had already shipped out before this, and I was on a shuttle between Manhattan and San Juan, Puerto Rico. I had a very easy gig, very few hours a day, a lot of time off on the ship. And on one time when we were coming back from Puerto Rico, I had this strange thing experience. This really weird phenomenon. That is, when you're on ships, you have a certain rhythm. I could read for X amount of time, and then my eyes would get tired, and I have to do something else. And all of the things I would draw or write, all of the things that I did that were compartmentalized, how I used my time, slowed down to a crawl. And it really spooked me. I couldn't understand. I read as long as my eyes would take it, and like 15 minutes had gone by, not 45 minutes. And all of these things that were this compression of time, I didn't know what to do. I actually was so spooked that I quit the ship when we got back to Manhattan. And years later, I'm now on a ship inadvertently going to the Far East. It was called, I might as well tell you the whole story. It was called a pierhead jump. I was stuck in Baltimore, Maryland for a couple of months. I was broke, and because I had a C license, and you need to pick the ships, you needed a B or an A. Finally, my friends were tired of me, always broke. They were tired of seeing me, and I got a call at 5 o'clock in the morning from the union, and they said, we have a ship, they call it a pierhead jump. We have a ship leaving at 7. It's an ordinary seaman going to the Far East. You want it? I said, yes. I already had my duffel bag packed. I got on board the ship. And when I got on board, they pulled the gangway up. It was also the deck department, which was my favorite job on the ship. And I'm standing, there's nothing for me to do. I still have my gear. I haven't even gotten a forecastle yet, because they were making way, the tugboats were pushing the ship up. And this big black guy comes up to me. It says, anybody who's working on this ship is going to be crazy. I said, what? He said, don't you know what the cargo is? I said, no, this is a pierhead job. I just got the call from the union that there was an ordinary seaman's job, and I wanted it. He said, the ship's filled with explosives. So I'm on this ship that's actually a bomb. And I had brought a 16 millimeter Bolex camera, because now I had made one successful film, and this is and now I'm out of school, and I had bought a very inexpensive camera, and I had anyway, so I'm on board, and I'm on board thinking I'm going to make a movie about deprivation, because I thought what this shuttle between San Juan and Manhattan was about some kind of form of deprivation. I said, I want to really photograph this. I would see if I can capture this. But nothing happened. There's no deprivation on this ship. And so that I started just recording things that I saw. and I was on the bow of the ship on watch by myself, and I had a Sony tape recorder, cassette recorder, and I was talking a letter to my friend Robert Ashley, the composer, and his wife Mary, and this guy comes up to me, another ordinary seaman, and started. Yeah, the tape was running. He started telling me this story about before I got on the ship. He was on the wheel steering the ship. It was early in the morning, and they made a mistake and they hit a fishing boat, a Korean fishing boat, and the mate who was on duty on that shift talked him into not waking the captain and going back to look for survivors. So that became my film Sea Space, which is probably the most successful film in a way, certainly audience. It's been seen all over the world. But I'm just kind of, by the way, I forgot the question.
The question was, what role does intention play in your creative process? And you said, it has to tell a story, and yeah, then that's what you did.
So I got back. I was kind of depressed. I had a lot of footage. The camera had one lens, a 1-inch lens, which is 25 millimeter, which is also kind of the classic shape of tradition of the frame of films. When we look at a film, 25 millimeter is very old, and we're really used to it. It's been developed in a manner of exposure for us that is part of our imagination. We actually, a lot of times we see in 25 millimeter. And I had all this material, and I didn't have nothing. I didn't have my deprivation story. By the way, years later, I found out that the ship had gone through a thing called the Bermuda Triangle, an area which was notified as the Bermuda Triangle. Don't ask me what it means. All I know is I went through something pretty far out in that area. And so I went back and I started listening to the cassettes that I was sending to friends. And this cassette had this fellow seaman, George, confessing to the responsibility of not going back for survivors. And so I always found, my intention is always found as a byproduct of the beginning of the inquiry. And then something about it is larger than what I was thinking about. The film I just finished in October started when I had a commission to make a film a few years ago about a woman artist. She I made this movie about her, which was she was an extraordinary artist and human being. And between setups in her studio, her husband told me these 3 incredible stories about World War II. He was in World War II. And the stories were way over the top for me, and they were way more than I could handle. They were so violent, they were so outrageous. I didn't know what to do with it, and I called him. I called his wife, who was the subject of the documentary. About a year later, I said, "Do you think your husband Harold would be interested in telling his stories about war on camera?" And she said, "He's been waiting his whole life to tell those stories on camera."
Wow. So it led right. The commission work led to so it's constantly, you're aware of what's going on, you live in the moment, and then it leads you there. I got to tell you one thing though, that Milan Kundera said, the author, in The Unbearable Likeness of Being. He says, "This is why I love writing, because the character that I'm writing about can go further than I can." And that's sort of what happened. Your character in the Sea film went farther than you could by them just saying it. You were just there, the observer. You're observational cinema, and you capture it. But my question, William, is you discuss this intention question. I mean, it's immense in your filmography. We could go through each film and talk about intention, but in general, Duchamp said there's no art without an audience. How much are you thinking of your viewer when you're making your film? Because when you made your first film, did you think, well, I'll show it in Monterey and the audience will go crazy and they'll laugh and that will make me become a filmmaker? Then after that, you have some sense that you're getting some sort of feed from the audience live. If you put a sculpture in an art museum, you're not necessarily feeling what everybody who sees your sculpture. So you got that feel from screening a film and feeling the audience live. But how much, when you're making a film, are you thinking of your viewing audience?
So I want to I want to please bring that up again, but because I want to do the backstory. All of these films I do, not necessarily on a conscious level, but certainly on this last one that was very much conscious. When I was growing up, my mother sent me to the movies on Saturday and Sunday, and I saw 4 Hollywood features a weekend for about 7 or 8 years.
Yeah.
And so I was inundated with the idea of the hero, and
Yeah.
I thought I was the hero as a boy, and so I've proven I'm not the hero in the classic expression of what that word means. But it was so when Harold told me these 3 stories about what he did in the war, it fit right into my reimagining what my preoccupation with the hero did impact my life. I was in the Army. I didn't go to Vietnam. But backstory again, every Sunday I was given 50 cents, 25 cents for the collection, and 25 cents, which I spent on comics. All the comics were Two-Fisted Tales, war stories. That I was preoccupied with war. The first death I really experienced emotionally was when John Wayne was shot in the back in the film The Sands of Iwo Jima. The film ended, the titles came up, I couldn't get out of my seat. The whole theater, I was a little boy, the whole theater cleared out. I couldn't get out of my seat. I thought John Wayne was immortal. I couldn't believe he had died. So I have been impressed and inundated with war and the hero, so that what happened, what I brought to this movie after I decided, after Harold told me the stories, I decided to interview him. 2 other men appeared. One, Leo Lipwa, who was a medic, never hurt anybody, was just as damaged by the horror, and Paul Michael, who was a sergeant and killed a lot of people. And these 3 men actually deconstructed my idea of whatever romance I had left in my imagination of war. And the film is about telling the story, these 3 men telling the stories, and they gave me their legacy. One of the men said to me, I hope I don't go to jail for what I just told you. He told me something that took place 70 years ago.
Yeah.
And so it's like the first place, one Sea Space, where George just had to get his pain off of his mind to share it. These 3 men gave me their pain and their suffering.
Yeah.
And so I'm setting this up as my purpose is to liberate my own experience, my own conditioning, my own presumptions about myself and the world. So films are about exploring what I think. And the gift has been that they have come to me. They had, because this is my objective, not that I want to entertain an audience. Of course I do. I want it to be entertaining and informative. But I'm actually preoccupied with telling the stories that liberate me from my self-images that are not relevant to who I am now, but who have influenced my behavior my entire life.
Amazing, William, because here's the other line. The poet critic Helen Vendler just died, and in her New York obit, it said, I write to explain things to myself.
Yeah.
That's sort of what you're doing. You're saying you're making films to explain this stuff to yourself, but at the same time, you can't erase because you've learned that whole culture of comic books and movies and what entertainment is, but that how much you're concerned about the audience a little, but it's more like you're concerned about how it's processing you.
Also, I have great respect for the audience. I mean, I understand that it's you want to entertain them, you want to surprise them, you want to give them something they haven't had before. It's a there's a book called The Gift, of course, a great, very famous book. But for me, it's a form of giving. I
Yeah,
have great regard for the audience, great regard. So I I serve the audience, but I have the purpose of my own level of self-discovery.
yeah. And so McLuhan says everything we invent extends some humanness. And I gotta just interject. Have you seen the movie Beyond the Bolex?
No, I haven't.
Oh, dude, you're gonna freak out. This woman, she's in a film class. She goes up to her teacher and says, "My grandfather invented the Bolex. I was thinking of making a film about him." It took her 16 years. It's not like it's the greatest film, but having owned a Bolex, you have to see this film. Seek it out. And it's really fun because it does, it's a tool that so many of us are familiar with, but no one knows, cares about Bolexes anymore much. And so just when you said Bolex, I really want you to go out and seek that film out because you'll get a kick out of it. But
Yeah, send me the link.
yeah, Beyond the Bolex. And so, but here's the thing, William. Marshall said everything we invent extends some humanness, like the knife and fork extends our teeth, and the shutter in a camera or projector extends our eyelid. And maybe even non-tangible, say religion or consciousness is no religion or philosophy might be an extension of consciousness. So what does the Bolex, the film camera, the moving image camera extend for you? What humanness?
First, I want to do a setup. When I was in the army, I worked as an illustrator for agency that did made tools for spies. I had a
Yeah,
top secret clearance, and so I had my little area where I drawing board and everything where I was doing my work,
yeah,
and there was another a cabinet, and they had other tools, and one of the things they had was a box from Switzerland, and inside of it they had a Bolex. And on the cover, if you ever saw the box that the Bolex comes in, they had a photograph of the camera. I mean, a color photograph. And before I even thought of the idea that I could give myself permission to think about making films, I would take that box and just sit it beside me and look at it. It was an icon. It was like something that
okay,
represented something that I didn't know. I mean, I was intimidated by the technology, everything, but it was something I was drawn to.
yeah,
And and so finding the tool that allows you permission to make an inquiry, and the inquiry becomes your life.
yeah,
And so all of these tools are if you take it seriously, they have the potential to be your guide.
yeah,
They take you, they take you to situations that I mean, I've been all over the world filming, and there'd be no way in hell that I would have been to many of these places if I didn't have a camera, if I didn't have an excuse. So being in calling myself a filmmaker has allowed me a great deal of permission to just being outrageously curious.
yeah. That curiosity has come up a lot. Do you think it's how your parents raised you or you got it on your own?
Um, I grew up. My mother and father, all my relatives were wonderful people. In that group were some great storytellers, uh, um, and they. I also grew up with uh, a lot of people. My mother and father weren't very happy, but they had great appreciation to their friends, and they knew how to have a good time.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I remember as a kid, after the holidays, people would come to our house for sandwiches, probably turkey sandwiches, probably or ham sandwiches, and everyone was always in the kitchen. I think I like kitchens. When you come from working class people, people like to be in an environment that's a kitchen, a work environment, and they'd all gather around the kitchen table and they'd smoke cigarettes and eat and talk and tell terrible stories about themselves. They were always the blunt of their humor. They didn't make well, they made fun of other people at times, but most of the time they were telling stories that they were the punchline. And the stories were so good. Myself and my cousin Craig would be leaning on the sink, laughing, but our eyes were rolling from the smoke. My eyes were burning. One holiday, I actually bought one of these ashtrays that absorbs smoke, so I could stay in the kitchen and listen to these people talk as a kid.
Smart move.
And so I grew up with people who loved life and loved good stories.
Celebrated that. Well, that's beautiful. Leads right into, Hollis Frampton, the great experimental filmmaker, said, narrative is born among the animal necessities of the spirit because we're waiting to die. Can you forget to die?
Yes. I've had a couple of dances with Western medicine in the last few years, and I reached at a certain moment a certain level of peace, and I hope I can sustain that.
Well, that was amazing because, first of all, I added that question a couple years ago and people can't take it. They go, "What do you mean, can you forget to die?" And they don't know if I mean literally or metaphorically. And I love when someone says, "Can you forget to die?" And they go, "Yes." But some people interpret that, well, you forgot how to live. But of all people, William, you know how to live. And that at the same time you can forget how to die, so it's not like, oh my god, I got to be obsessed that I'm going to die, and I got to worry about this. Like, every day is about living in the moment.
I think it's not unreasonable for anybody as they're in the third act of their life to say, "Hey, I gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
I made enough mistakes for several lifetimes, but I gave it my best shot, and I loved being alive in the
Yeah.
physical world."
Yeah. Well, I asked for 90 minutes, William, and it's already there. And I wanted to ask you if we could do a part two, because I really want to get I really want to get deeper into your films and the whole um, pursuit of truth and storytelling and freedom in all these topics that you cover so well, and especially delve into how you've dabbled, not even dabbled, you're knee deep in it with Joan and with Alvin and with George Manupelli and Robert Ashley, the avant-garde, the people who really um, are so important in establishing what conceptual art was in America.
Robert Ashley and Mary Ashley saw more in me than I saw in myself.
Yeah.
We was, one quick story. I know we're running out of time. I was a
No,
bartender.
go ahead. I'm open for stories. Yeah.
I was a bartender at Mandrake's in Berkeley, and I was in graduate school at the time. Bill Evans was playing. Bill Evans, and the place was dead quiet. The place was
Yeah.
sold, and Bob and Mary had to sit at the bar. I didn't know them, and we started talking. We were actually whispering. Mary was from Boston, and we got into a conversation, and a quiet conversation. And at the end, when the set ended and everyone applauded, Mary and Bob said, "Oh, you had to come and visit us." So I ended up teaching at the Center for Contemporary Music, teaching film. And so once again, these angels, I've always had angels in my life.
Yeah.
I'm so blessed.
So blessed. Well, it's blessed for me to spend this time with you, William. Thank you so much. And I'll send you that date. We can possibly do part 2 down the line. And even though I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, I hope this never ends and we can keep talking forever and ever.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, William.
Bye for now.
Bye.